The man went to the supermarket with the intention of buying meat. Surprisingly, the butcher not only refused to sell, but also bluntly threw the man out immediately. Seeing the man still standing there, unwilling to leave, the butcher wiped his hands on his filthy apron and stepped out from behind the counter. The man wanted to step forward to reason things out clearly, but several strangers rushed forward, grabbed him, and dragged him unceremoniously away. The man desperately wanted to reclaim his legitimate rights. But in the end, not only did he suffer a brutal beating, but he was also violently thrown out of the supermarket, no different from discarding a piece of trash. Feeling their anger still unquenched, those thugs even callously used metal cans to bash the man's head. Though beaten until his head was bleeding profusely, the man resolutely refused to yield. The man dragged his painful, limping steps back into the supermarket, found the butcher, and said, "I just want to say a few words to you." After wrestling the aggressive butcher to the ground, the man finally got the item he originally wanted to buy. After paying, the man heavily carried his purchase, limping step by step out of the supermarket. And this entire horrifying incident, it all stemmed from an immature and malicious lie told by that little girl. A few days earlier, taking advantage of the man closing his eyes and pretending to be dead still, the little girl had tiptoed over and placed a childish kiss on the man's cheek. Realizing something was not right, the man, alarmed, hurriedly pushed the little girl away. After that incident, the man not only gently explained to the little girl about the differences between males and females, but also kindly taught her that kisses should only be for the dearest loved ones, that is, her father and mother. Having her innocent gesture rejected, the little girl felt her fragile self-esteem deeply wounded. And so, when she returned home from school, the little girl harbored a bitter plan for revenge. She whispered to the principal, "He showed me his little thing. It was hard and long, just like a tiny wooden stick." However, what the little girl could not have foreseen at all was that her tiny lie would cruelly destroy the man's entire life. Living in a peaceful small town in Denmark, the relationships between people here were incredibly simple and sincere. Almost everyone knew and trusted each other. The men in the town often gathered to go hunting, picnicking, and enjoy cheerful times together. Lucas was a dedicated teacher at the town's kindergarten. Because he could immerse himself in the world of children, the kids deeply loved this kind-hearted and open-minded teacher like a big friend. One day, Lucas had just stepped out of the supermarket after shopping when he unexpectedly saw his young student, little Clara, standing alone and bewildered by the roadside. After kindly asking around, Lucas learned that the little girl had gone out to play and couldn't find her way home. So Lucas, finding it convenient, drove her all the way home. Clara's father, a man named Theo, was Lucas's childhood best friend. The two were also kindred spirits, closer than anyone else. Out of genuine concern, Theo asked Lucas about the recent state of his relationship with his wife. Lucas wasn't entirely honest when he said everything was fine, but that clumsy lie couldn't escape the notice of his close friend. After so many years of bonding and understanding each other, Theo could tell if Lucas was hiding anything just by a glance at his face. It turned out Lucas had just gone through a painful divorce, and his young son was currently living with his ex-wife. Christmas was fast approaching, and Lucas desperately longed for his son to return and celebrate a warm and meaningful holiday season with him. As for Clara, who was lost and safely brought home by Lucas, Theo offered no comfort. Instead, he sternly told her to go to her room to think and reflect on herself. It seemed this wasn't the first time the little girl had intentionally gotten lost. Perhaps this was the innocent girl's way of trying to attract the attention of her parents, who seemed to be growing increasingly distant. The next day, Lucas happened to find Clara sitting sadly on the steps outside her house. Inside, her parents were constantly arguing about who would take her to school. Clara looked incredibly miserable and lost. She couldn't understand why her parents kept arguing endlessly like that, making the family atmosphere tense and suffocating. Lucas called Theo to inform him about Clara's situation, then gently took her hand and walked together towards the school. Although at the kindergarten he was always friendly and played with the children, that closeness was limited to naughty boys. With girls, he always maintained a polite and cautious distance, perhaps to avoid unnecessary misunderstandings. Perhaps Lucas's consistent kind attention made Clara feel incredibly close and trust him. She carefully wrapped a small paper heart, intending to give it to Lucas as a special gift, a symbol of her affection. Seeing Lucas happily playing and romping with other boys during recess, a radiant smile blossomed on Clara's innocent face, coming from the bottom of her heart. Perhaps in her tender heart, this was truly the image of a father she had always secretly wished for. Then, when Lucas closed his eyes, pretending to be fast asleep during a children's game, Clara quickly ran to his side, and the tragedy scene at the beginning of the film began to unfold. Having an innocent and well-intentioned gesture rejected, Clara felt her tiny soul as if pierced by an invisible wound. Her small face was instantly filled with sadness and disappointment. Although he clearly perceived Clara's unhappiness, Lucas didn't pay much attention to it. He thought it was just a fleeting childish pout. One late afternoon after school, Clara's parents hadn't come to pick her up on time. Huddled in a dark and quiet corner of the kindergarten office, Clara uttered a malicious lie to get revenge on Lucas, telling the principal, "He showed me his little thing. It was hard and long, just like a tiny wooden stick." In reality, the reason she could describe it so vividly and graphically was because she had accidentally seen small video clips that older boys often watched and overheard their descriptions of the strange shape of that thing in the videos. To prove that her words were completely true, not fabricated or imagined, Clara even took out the paper heart she had carefully prepared for Lucas and lied that it was a peace offering Lucas had intentionally given her. This made the principal feel incredibly incredulous, but she chose to believe Clara. After all, how could a mere 5-year-old girl lie? After seeing Clara off, the principal held the paper hard and sank deep into thought. The very next weekend, Lucas was completely oblivious to what was happening. He went hunting in the forest. His unerring marksmanship helped him take down a plump moose with just one shot. That evening, everyone enjoyed the delicious venison together. After taking a drunken Theo home, Lucas also invited his female colleague from the kindergarten, Nadia, over. Nadia had just moved there for work and was still single. Between the two, there was an instant spark, feelings developing right from their first meeting. After a restless night together, they happily walked to work hand in hand. Lucas thought a beautiful life was about to begin, but what followed plunged him into hell. Lucas hadn't even played with the children for 2 minutes when the principal, with a heavy expression, called him into her office. The principal spoke in a rather roundabout way, only asking Lucas if he had done anything inappropriate with the children, but absolutely did not mention any child's name. Although Lucas adamantly denied it, he still felt extremely bewildered. To clarify everything, the principal told Lucas to go home and rest for a few days, to wait until things were cleared up before talking further. After all, this was an extremely serious matter for the kindergarten. To understand the full story, the principal invited a child psychologist, hoping Clara would recount exactly what had happened that day. Clara seemed to have realized her mistake. She completely denied what she had said before. Facing 2 adults with stern expressions, she said she really wanted to go out and play with her friends. The principal thought Clara was scared and therefore didn't dare to speak, so she encouraged the little girl to speak boldly, assuring her that everyone would protect her. At this point, the psychologist's words also began to sound suggestive. Perhaps wanting to quickly end the conversation to go out and play, no matter what the psychologist asked, Clara nodded in agreement. A truth that never existed was thus born. Finally, the expert suggested it would be best to hand this matter over to the police, and also to inform all the children's parents. That evening, the principal called Clara's mother. She delicately recounted the incident. "Your daughter may very well have been interacted with, and the perpetrator is someone very close to the family." As for who it was, the principal did not specify. The next day, at the kindergarten's parent-teacher meeting, the principal directly announced this matter. She pointed out that there might not be only one victim. She instructed parents to go home and pay attention to their child's recent condition, checking for unusual symptoms such as bedwetting, headaches, or nightmares. Although the principal did not mention Lucas's name and advised everyone not to make a big deal of it for the time being, such a shocking piece of news in a small town, combined with Lucas being suspended from work and sent home to rest, meant that in less than half a day, the entire town was buzzing with gossip. Regardless of whether their children had a fever or were sulking, they all assumed it might be due to having been interacted with. In an instant, Lucas became the town's pervert. That evening, even Lucas's ex-wife and son found out. His son, Marcus, sobbed on the phone. "Mom told me not to contact you anymore." At this point, Lucas truly realized the seriousness of the problem. He told Nadia about it, but Nadia just brushed it off with a laugh. "It's just childish nonsense. Who would believe it's true?" However, subsequent events increasingly spiraled out of control. To prove his innocence, Lucas arrived at the kindergarten very early the next day. When he walked into the principal's office, everyone looked at him with strange eyes. The principal avoided him like the plague and also loudly called Lucas a pervert. Hearing those words, Lucas could no longer tolerate it. "You said you would investigate clearly. Is this how you investigate? What exactly did I do wrong?" The principal, also emotional, retorted, "Clara is just such a small girl, and you didn't spare her. Are you even human? Lucas wanted to clarify what Clara had said, but he was roughly thrown out of the kindergarten by other men, who warned him it would be best to stay away from children from now on. Lucas was completely confused. He usually treated Clara quite well. He couldn't understand why the little girl would falsely accuse him like that. To uncover the truth of the matter, Lucas went to Clara's house, wanting to confront her directly to see what exactly had happened. As his former closest friend, Theo still politely invited Lucas into the house. Although Theo believed Lucas had done nothing wrong, he also believed his 5-year-old daughter wouldn't lie. Just when Theo didn't know what to do, his wife saw Lucas sitting in the living room and flew into a rage, immediately throwing Lucas out and threatening that she never wanted to see him again or else she would castrate him. But Theo, too agitated by his wife's anger, lost control. He grabbed Lucas by the collar and shoved him against the wall. "If you really touched my daughter, I'll blow your head off with a hunting rifle." Hearing the commotion, Clara came out to see. Lucas simply greeted her. He knew that facing a Theo enraged to the point of madness, anything he said would be useless, so he had no choice but to leave. Seeing her parents so furious, Clara finally realized the seriousness of the situation. She tried to tell her parents the truth, but her mother dismissed those words as a reaction to psychological trauma, believing her daughter had become confused in her thoughts after a major shock. Clara also didn't know how to explain. In another development, the principal told Lucas's story to Nadia in front of all their colleagues, advising her to stay away from this pervert and scum. Nadia naturally didn't believe them, because she knew very well that Lucas at the kindergarten had never touched the girls. And after a few days of interaction, she hadn't found any strange habits in him either. Just as Lucas was thinking about how to explain things to his ex-wife, Clara knocked on his door. She wanted to take Lucas's pet dog for a walk. Lucas cautiously looked around, then reminded the little girl that she needed her parents' permission to come there. When Lucas asked Clara, "Did I do anything bad to you?" Clara replied, "I don't know. I don't remember anymore." And there were others too. It seemed Clara might have been interacted with by others. Perhaps she didn't remember clearly or was too scared to say. The result was linking this matter to Lucas. Lucas wanted to clarify who the others she mentioned were. He wanted to step forward and take Clara's hand, but she instinctively recoiled in fear, crying and saying she was very scared. Regarding her request to walk the dog, Lucas refused and advised her to go home quickly. The scene at the front door was witnessed entirely by Nadia. Seeing Clara's fearful expression, a spark of doubt also rose in Nadia's heart. This was like rubbing salt into Lucas's wound. Lucas angrily ordered Nadia out of the room. That day, it suddenly snowed heavily. Clara happily ran out into the yard, spinning and dancing. Because no matter how big a matter, for children it's only temporary. She had completely forgotten about Lucas. In another development, Lucas, the falsely accused man, moped around the house all day. Clothes were strewn all over the room, and dishes piled up in the kitchen. All of it seemed to reflect his utter despair at that moment. Any movement outside made him vigilant, fearing the townspeople would launch a surprise attack. Unexpectedly, it was his son, Marcus, who came, braving the snow to visit him. Compared to the rumors outside, Marcus believed that his father was absolutely not that kind of person. To comfort his father, the boy skipped school without his mother's permission, deciding to be by his father's side in this dark moment. Not long after, Marcus's godfather also rushed over. Similarly, he also stood by Lucas, believing him to be innocent and blameless. Although the police had launched an investigation, there was still no news about the case's progress. The godfather held Lucas's hand, telling him to persevere, that everything would eventually become clear. Marcus went to the supermarket to buy supplies. When it was time to pay, he was informed that this place no longer welcomed him and his father, and they should not return. Although very angry, Marcus did not argue with them. However, just as he arrived at his doorstep, he saw his father being escorted away by 2 police officers. The police did not allow the father and son to talk much, and immediately put Lucas into the police car. Being in too much of a hurry, Lucas even forgot to give his son the key. Normally, they would leave a spare key under the plank in front of the house. But ever since Lucas was suspected by the townspeople, he had put that key away. Due to their good relationship with Theo, the 2 families always kept spare keys for each other. Marcus went to Theo's house to get the spare key. When Theo learned Lucas was taken by the police for questioning, he kindly invited Marcus inside. Marcus wanted to ask Theo and his family for help for his father, but was refused with the words, "You don't need to be responsible for your father's mistakes." Marcus insisted that his father was absolutely not that kind of person and immediately questioned Clara, "Why did you lie? Why did you harm my dad?" During the scuffle, Marcus angrily spat in Clara's face. Several people wanted to forcibly remove the boy from the room. Pushed hard, the young and hot-headed Marcus suddenly lashed out. For a young child, his actions were akin to a grasshopper trying to overturn a cart. The result was that he was thoroughly beaten up by the group. With nowhere else to go, Marcus went to his godfather's house. They discussed Lucas's case together. After a period of police investigation, a completely absurd thing was discovered. The children suspected of being interacted with all said they had been lured by Lucas to his basement and described it in great detail, from the wall paint color to the sofa arrangement. However, when the police searched Lucas's house, they found that he had no basement at all. This proved that all the children had lied. This alone was enough to prove Lucas's innocence. That evening, Marcus saw a photo of his father from his youth on the wall. The photo also showed a group of friends who had played and grown up together in the town. Their relationship had once been so close, but now it had turned into hatred all because of a child's lie. The next day, the godfather gave Marcus good news. Lucas had been acquitted by the court and was on his way there. Marcus, overjoyed, arrived early and waited downstairs. Finally, his father had been vindicated. The father and son emotionally embraced tightly, finally shedding the heavy burden in their hearts. Back home, Lucas stood at the door. He thought life would return to its previous course, but he had underestimated human nature. That evening, the father and son happily chatted about a bright future. Suddenly, a large rock flew in through the window. Lucas told his son to hide well and not move, then grabbed a baseball bat and rushed outside. But there was no one outside, only a black plastic bag lying on the ground. Lucas cautiously approached to look, and to his horror, inside was the corpse of his pet dog. This dog had been with their family for over 10 years, holding special meaning for both father and son. Marcus immediately lost control. The boy grabbed a steel pipe, intending to go avenge the dog, but in his heart, he actually had no answer as to who had killed it. Fearing his young son would do something foolish, Lucas took Marcus back to his ex-wife's house. In the heavy rain, Lucas painfully dug a hole in the backyard. He personally buried the old friend who had accompanied him for over 10 years. On Christmas Eve, Lucas went to the supermarket to buy holiday supplies, and then what happened at the beginning of the film occurred. The butcher at the supermarket not only refused to sell to him, but also beat him savagely, then along with others, threw him out of the supermarket. Although the law had restored his innocence, people's hearts still refused to let go. Lucas, undeterred, limped back to the supermarket, single-handedly subdued the butcher, and finally bought what he wanted. As he walked out of the supermarket, he was seen by Theo's family. Clara curiously asked why she didn't see his dog, but she had no idea that the dog had died because of her lie. Theo wanted to step forward to help, but was stopped by his wife. In truth, through his daughter's confession, along with police evidence and Lucas's gaze when facing him, Theo knew Lucas hadn't done anything excessive, but there was always a group of people around inciting others. He himself had fallen into a deep spiral of doubt and prejudice. Lucas sat in the darkness, his heart filled with despair. According to the town's custom, on Christmas Eve, everyone would go to church to sing carols and attend service. After careful thought, Lucas decided he would also attend. If he didn't go, everyone would assume he had indeed done something bad and was therefore afraid. He had to go to prove his innocence himself. Then, he limped straight into the church. He didn't flinch from the strange glances of others, but walked straight through the crowd with a straight back, found an empty seat, and sat down. Everyone who saw him showed surprise. When the prayer began, Lucas turned his head and stared intently at Theo's face. Theo also didn't avoid his gaze, but a hint of surprise appeared on his face. Earlier in the film, it was said that Theo was very confident he could easily tell if Lucas was lying, but this time he didn't detect any signs that Lucas was lying. Afterwards, Theo turned to his wife and said he had seen something in Lucas's eyes. Next was the children's choir performing a hymn. Clara was also in the choir. Seeing Lucas sitting in the pews, she paused for a moment. Amidst the echoing hallelujah, Lucas finally could no longer hold it in. The pent-up resentment from the past period exploded. He repeatedly slammed his hands on the table to vent his anger, then stood up and walked towards Theo and his wife, who were whispering to each other. Lucas angrily threw the Bible at Theo, loudly challenging, "Do you have something to say to me? Do you have anything to say to me?" This stunned everyone present, even Clara on stage. The more Lucas spoke, the more agitated he became, and he began to repeatedly punch Theo. Knowing he was in the wrong, Theo didn't fight back or dodge, but let his old best friend vent his heart out. Lucas gripped Theo's head tightly, making him look straight into his eyes. "What can you see in my eyes?" Finally, an agitated Lucas was escorted out by the townspeople. Theo remained dazed in his seat, because he had seen utter despair in Lucas's eyes. Back home, Theo stood smoking alone in the hallway. On the bed, Clara was sleeping. In her hazy dream, she saw Lucas's dog. Theo heard his daughter speak and went to see. Clara looked at the shadow at the door, thinking it was Lucas. "Hello, Lucas. Things shouldn't have happened this way." At this moment, Theo finally became certain that he had wronged his best friend for so many years. Sitting by his daughter's bed, his tears flowed, and he sobbed. Not long after, Clara also woke up. Seeing her father crying by the bed, and hearing him say Lucas was his best friend, Clara once again told the truth. "I only said stupid things, he didn't do anything." Theo nodded, indicating he understood everything. Waiting for his daughter to fall asleep, Theo packed some good food and wine, intending to go find Lucas to apologize. His wife didn't advise him to go. In reality, deep down they had long known Lucas was innocent. They just didn't want to confront it directly. Theo didn't listen to his wife and brought the food to Lucas's house. Seeing Theo bring food, Lucas initially still refused. Even after eating what Theo brought, he still sent Theo away. Faced with Lucas's not-so-firm dismissal, Theo still didn't leave. The two old friends reconciled their misunderstanding in silence. A year passed since the interaction case, when golden leaves covered the ground. Lucas and Nadia got back together. Everyone warmly embraced and congratulated them, as if everything had returned to normal. However, at the party, Lucas realized something was wrong. People's gazes still carried deep hostility. A few people quickly looked away when their eyes met his. At the party, the Godfather handed Marcus a rifle, congratulating him on getting his hunting license. This was also a coming-of-age ritual according to the town's custom, marking Marcus's transition into manhood. After the party, Lucas saw Clara standing quietly at the door. She didn't know what to do because she didn't want to step on the squares on the floor. Seeing this, Lucas didn't hesitate. He sat down, picked Clara up, and brought her to her parents. When facing Clara, Lucas didn't shy away. Because an innocent person has nothing to fear, he chose to bravely face it directly. Not long after, Lucas took his son hunting for the first time. Being his first time participating in this activity, Marcus was very excited. Seeing the hunter at the foot of the mountain whistle a greeting to them, the foolish boy whistled back. But this action made all the prey run away. Lucas told the boy to wait there. He would go down to check the situation and decide what to do next. At this moment, a deer appeared on the hillside not far away. Lucas slowly approached. Just as he was intensely focused on the prey, a gunshot rang out near Lucas's ear. He startled and crouched down. The bullet lodged in the large tree right next to him. Clearly, this shot was aimed directly at him. Lucas stood motionless, bewildered, looking towards the direction of the gunshot. Because of the backlight, he only saw a blurred silhouette, couldn't tell who it was, only saw that person skillfully loading and aiming. Lucas, unarmed, could only silently await his fate. However, right at that critical moment, the person turned and walked away. Lucas had always thought of himself as an unerring marksman, but it was only then that he realized he was the real prey. The entire film offers many things to ponder. First, why did Clara lie? The main reason was probably due to her parents' lack of attention. They frequently argued in front of their child, not even noticing when the little girl got lost. That's why Clara grew fond of Lucas, who treated her well. But Lucas's love for the children was impartial. This turned Clara's affection into hatred. When she realized the situation was becoming serious, Clara repeatedly tried to tell the truth, but both the psychologist and her parents chose to ignore it. A lie from a little girl could only cause small ripples, but once adults enabled it, it would surely become a raging tsunami. As for who ultimately fired the shot, the director never revealed it. It could have been Clara's older brother, because he always wanted revenge and to unleash his hatred for his sister. It could also have been any resident in the town, because they all stood on the luminous pinnacle of morality. Today's story ends here. Thank you for watching the film. What do you think of this film?